Imagine that tomorrow morning, every computer on Earth stopped working. Every phone, every satellite, every power grid. Within days, modern civilization would begin to unravel. Now ask yourself something even more unsettling. How much of what we built could we actually rebuild from scratch? Not improve, not replace, rebuild. Because history has a habit of exposing an uncomfortable truth. Nearly 2,000 years ago, Roman engineers built harbors that still stand beneath the sea today. Waves have battered them day after day for centuries, yet many remain remarkably durable. Meanwhile, some modern concrete structures need major repairs after only a few decades. How can a civilization with no electricity create something that still challenges modern materials science? And that wasn't the only mystery. Ancient blacksmiths forged legendary Damascus steel, whose traditional methods later faded from history. The Byzantine Empire wielded Greek fire, a weapon so feared that its exact recipe disappeared with the empire itself. Then, resting at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, archaeologists uncovered a corroded mass of bronze gears, an ancient machine so sophisticated it forced historians to rethink what people in the ancient world were capable of. These weren't isolated accidents. They were clues pointing to a forgotten pattern. Because history doesn't always move forward. Sometimes, history forgets. And tonight, we're opening a time capsule filled not with treasures, but with a lost knowledge that once shaped civilization, where evidence matters more than sensation. Subscribe now. Every week, we uncover forgotten civilizations, buried discoveries, and ancient mysteries that history textbooks never fully explained. The Mediterranean Sea is calm just after sunrise. Beneath its shimmering surface, massive stone blocks disappear into the blue. Fish weave through ancient arches as sunlight dances across walls that have stood here for nearly 2,000 years. Every wave that crashes against them should be wearing them away, grain by grain, year after year. Instead, something remarkable has happened. In many places, these ancient Roman harbor structures have endured for centuries in one of the harshest environments imaginable. While modern marine concrete often requires significant maintenance after decades of exposure, some Roman structures have survived far longer under constant assault from salt water. Imagine standing on this harbor nearly 2,000 years ago. The air smells of seawater and wood smoke. Sailors unload cargo from merchant ships arriving from across the empire. Stonemasons haul baskets of volcanic ash. Builders mix lime, seawater, and chunks of volcanic rock with practiced hands. There are no machines humming in the background, no calculators, no cement trucks, just generations of knowledge passed from master to apprentice. To the workers, it is another ordinary day. None of them realize they are creating something that will outlive emperors, kingdoms, and even the civilization that taught them how to build it. That is where our mystery begins. For generations, historians admired Roman architecture, but modern materials scientists wanted a different answer. They didn't just want to know how the Romans built. They wanted to know why these structures lasted so long. The obvious explanation was simple craftsmanship, but the evidence suggested something deeper. Researchers collected samples from ancient Roman harbor concrete and carried them into laboratories. Under powerful microscopes, they examined minerals that have remained locked inside the material for nearly 20 centuries. What they found challenged long-held assumptions. Scattered throughout the concrete were bright white fragments known as limeclasts. For years, many experts believed these pieces were simply the result of poor mixing or rushed construction. They were treated as imperfections, mistakes left behind by ancient builders. Then researchers asked a different question. What if those mistakes weren't mistakes at all? As the investigation continued, scientists discovered that when tiny cracks formed inside the concrete, water could interact with these lime-rich fragments. That process encouraged new minerals to grow, helping seal some of the damage before it spread further. In other words, parts of the material possess a natural ability to repair itself over time under the right conditions. It sounded almost impossible. Yet laboratory experiments suggested the Romans may have unintentionally, or perhaps deliberately, created a concrete capable of remarkable long-term resilience. The sea itself had become part of the construction process. Every incoming wave carried minerals into the concrete. Over centuries, chemical reactions produced new crystal formations that strengthened parts of the structure instead of simply eroding it. The ocean wasn't just testing Roman concrete, it was helping transform it. That realization changed the conversation entirely. The Romans hadn't discovered magic. They had discovered a relationship between natural materials and the environment that modern builders are only beginning to understand again. But another question quickly emerged. If scientists now understand many of the ingredients, why don't we simply build every harbor this way? The answer reveals something important about civilization itself. Modern engineering solves different problems. Today's concrete is designed for speed, consistency, cost, and large-scale construction. Roman builders worked under completely different conditions, using locally available volcanic materials and methods refined over generations. Their goal wasn't to pour thousands of tons in a single afternoon. Their techniques reflected the materials, environment, and needs of their time. Progress doesn't always mean replacing the past. Sometimes it means choosing different priorities. And sometimes, valuable knowledge quietly slips away because the world that created it disappears. When the Western Roman Empire declined, trade networks fractured, workshops closed, skilled craftsmen died. Apprentices no longer learned from masters who had spent decades perfecting their craft. Knowledge that had once flowed naturally between generations became fragmented. History rarely announces when it loses something. There is no single day when humanity wakes up and realizes an entire building tradition has vanished. It happens slowly. One workshop closes. One teacher is never replaced. One recipe is no longer written down. Then, centuries later, someone uncovers an ancient harbor and asks a question nobody expected. How did they do this? Roman concrete teaches us something far greater than chemistry. It reminds us that knowledge is not permanent. It survives only as long as people choose to preserve it, teach it, and pass it forward. Standing on those ancient harbors today, it is tempting to see only stone. But hidden inside every block is another story. A story about memory. A story about forgotten craftsmanship. A story about a civilization that understood something the modern world is still working to rediscover. And astonishing as that mystery is, the Romans were not the only civilization to leave behind a secret that time could not easily explain. Somewhere in the heat of ancient forges, master blacksmiths created blades so extraordinary that they became legends. When those masters disappeared, so did their craft. Long before factories filled the world with machines, a sword could decide the fate of an empire. Kings offered fortunes to own them. Warriors believed their lives depended on them. Merchants carried them across deserts and mountains, guarding them as if they were treasures made of gold. But these blades weren't famous because of who wielded them. They became legendary because of what they could do. Stories spread across continents about swords that could slice through armor, hold an edge after countless battles, and shimmer with beautiful flowing patterns that looked like ripples on water. They became known as Damascus steel, named after the ancient city that became one of the great trading centers of the medieval world. For centuries, their reputation grew until they seemed almost mythical. Some tales claimed they could cut silk as it floated through the air. Others insisted they could bend without breaking and return perfectly to their original shape. Many of these stories were almost certainly exaggerated over time, as legends often are. Yet behind the myth stood a remarkable reality. These were exceptional blades, crafted through skill that later generations struggled to reproduce in exactly the same way. Imagine standing inside a small workshop somewhere in the Middle East nearly 1,000 years ago. The room glows orange from a charcoal furnace. Every breath carries the smell of smoke and hot iron. A master blacksmith studies the color of glowing metal, not with instruments or digital displays, but with decades of experience trained into his eyes. Around him, apprentices work in silence, watching every movement. No measurements are written on paper. No instruction manual hangs on the wall. The knowledge lives inside people. Every strike of the hammer matters. Every second the steel remains in the fire matters. Every decision changes the blade forever. Outside, customers see only the finished sword. Inside the workshop, generations of experience are shaping every swing of the hammer. Today, scientists understand that many historic Damascus blades were forged using material known as wood steel, produced primarily in parts of India before being traded across Asia and the Middle East. This steel contained a unique combination of carbon and trace elements. Combined with the skill of experienced smiths, careful heating, forging, and cooling produced the famous flowing surface patterns and impressive performance that made these blades so admired. But there was a problem. The process depended on far more than ingredients alone. It relied on craftsmen who understood subtle details that were rarely written down. Knowledge passed from one generation to the next through observation, repetition, and years of practice. Then history changed. Trade routes shifted. Political powers rose and fell. Wars interrupted commerce. Sources of the original wood steel became harder to obtain. Master craftsmen died. Their apprentices scattered. Little by little, the chain connecting one generation to the next began to break. There was no single moment when the secret disappeared. No dramatic announcement. No final blacksmith locking away the lost recipe. Instead, history did what it often does. It forgot. Centuries later, modern researchers began asking a simple question. Could these legendary blades be recreated? Metallurgists examined surviving swords under powerful microscopes. They analyzed their chemical composition, studied their crystal structures, and compared manufacturing techniques from historical records. Some modern craftsmen produced blades that looked remarkably similar. Others matched many of the original mechanical properties. But reproducing every aspect of the historic process with complete certainty proved extraordinarily difficult, partly because the original materials, techniques, and working conditions had changed or disappeared. The mystery wasn't just hidden inside the steel. It was hidden inside the lives of the people who made it. That realization changes everything. When we imagine technology, we often picture machines, computers, factories, robots. But for most of human history, technology lived in human memory. A master builder, a navigator, a physician, a blacksmith. Civilizations were built not only with tools, but with people whose skills could not simply be downloaded, copied, or backed up. Lose the person, and sometimes you lose the technology. The story of Damascus steel reminds us that innovation isn't only about discovering something new. It's about preserving what already exists. A recipe passed from parent to child. A technique demonstrated beside a glowing furnace. A lesson repeated until it becomes instinct. Those invisible connections are as important as a finished invention itself. Perhaps that is why the legend of Damascus steel continues to capture our imagination. It represents more than an extraordinary sword. It represents a fragile truth. Civilizations don't always lose knowledge because it was destroyed. Sometimes they lose it because they stop passing it on. And if one of history's greatest craft could slowly disappear without the world even noticing? What happens when an empire hides one of its most powerful inventions so carefully that almost no one is allowed to know its secret? That question would lead us to a weapon so terrifying that enemies believed it could command the sea itself. A weapon whose true formula vanished into history. Night falls over the eastern Mediterranean. The sea is almost silent. A fleet of enemy ships glides through the darkness, their sails catching the faint glow of the moon. Confident commanders believe victory is only hours away. They outnumber the defenders. Their crews are experienced. Their strategy is sound. Then, without warning, a burst of blazing liquid erupts from the walls of the defending ships. The flames roar across the water. Wood ignites instantly. Sails disappear behind walls of fire. Men leap into the sea expecting safety, only to discover something impossible. The fire follows them. Panic spreads faster than the flames themselves. To those witnessing it for the first time, it seems as though the sea has become fuel. This was a terrifying reputation of Greek fire, one of the most closely guarded military technologies in history. For centuries, the Byzantine Empire used it to defend its cities and dominate naval warfare. Chroniclers describe streams of burning liquid launched from bronze tubes mounted on ships. Other accounts tell of clay pots filled with a substance hurled toward enemy vessels where they shattered into fire. The exact appearance of every attack may have differed from battle to battle, but the psychological effect was always the same. Fear. Imagine standing on the deck of one of those Byzantine ships. The crew works quickly but speaks very little. A specially trained team prepares a mysterious mixture inside sealed containers. The formula is known only to a handful of trusted individuals. Even many soldiers fighting alongside them have never seen how it is made. The order is given. A bronze siphon is lowered toward the approaching fleet. A roaring jet of flame tears across the darkness. Within moments, the battle changes. Long before gunpowder transformed warfare, Greek fire gave the Byzantine Empire an advantage that enemies struggled to understand. Naturally, rival kingdoms wanted the secret. Spies searched for it. Captured sailors were questioned. Foreign rulers offered rewards for anyone who could reveal the formula. Yet the empire protected it with extraordinary care. Historical records suggest that knowledge of the weapon was restricted to a small circle of specialists. The fewer people who understood it, the harder it became for enemies to copy. For centuries, that strategy worked. Until history took an unexpected turn. Empires do not last forever. As Byzantine power weakened through wars, political upheaval, and territorial losses, institutions that had protected specialized knowledge also began to unravel. Workshops disappeared. Experts died. Records were lost. Whether the complete formula was ever written down, or whether much of it lived only in the memories of trained craftsmen, remains uncertain. Today, historians and chemists have proposed several possible ingredients. Many believe petroleum-based substances, pine resin, sulfur, quicklime, or other materials may have played important roles. Some experiments have produced mixtures with similar characteristics, but no surviving document provides a definitive recipe accepted by all scholars. The truth is remarkably simple. We still don't know exactly how Greek fire was made, and perhaps we never will. But maybe the formula isn't the greatest mystery. Think about it. The Byzantine Empire spent centuries protecting one of the world's most powerful military secrets. That decision helped preserve the empire, yet it may also have guaranteed that the knowledge would disappear when the empire itself declined. The same secrecy that protected the invention may have prevented future generations from understanding it. It's one of history's great ironies. Knowledge hidden too well can become knowledge lost forever. That lesson reaches far beyond ancient warfare. Even today, companies protect trade secrets. Governments classify technologies. Research laboratories guard discoveries until patents are secured. Secrecy can encourage innovation. But history reminds us that it also carries a risk. If knowledge is shared too widely, it may be stolen. If it is shared too narrowly, it may vanish. Civilization is always balanced on that fragile line. The story of Greek fire isn't really about a weapon. It's about trust. Who deserves to know? Who decides what is preserved? And what happens when the last keeper of a secret is gone? They are pieces of a single truth about civilization itself. The greatest thing history has ever lost was never an empire. It was memory. Imagine walking through the ruins of a city that once ruled the world. The streets are silent. The workshops are empty. The furnaces have gone cold. Wind blows through broken columns where merchants, engineers, astronomers, and craftsmen once gathered every day. Nothing about the ruins tells you what was said inside these buildings. Nothing reveals the countless lessons passed from one generation to the next. Stone can survive for thousands of years. Knowledge cannot. That is the difference. Throughout this journey, we followed four extraordinary mysteries. Roman engineers created harbor concrete that has endured for nearly 2,000 years, revealing building techniques that scientists are still studying today. Master blacksmiths forged Damascus steel through skills that gradually faded as trade routes shifted and generations of craftsmen disappeared. The Byzantine Empire guarded Greek fire so closely that when the empire weakened, the complete knowledge behind one of history's most feared weapons disappeared with it. And beneath the Mediterranean Sea, a corroded collection of bronze gears waited centuries before reminding the modern world that ancient engineers had achieved far more than anyone once imagined. At first glance, these stories seem unrelated. Different civilizations, different centuries, different inventions. But look closer. A single pattern begins to emerge. None of these technologies vanished because nature defeated them. They disappeared because the fragile chain connecting one generation to the next were broken. History often teaches us about the rise and fall of empires. Far less attention is given to something quieter, the rise and fall of knowledge itself. Every civilization depends on memory, not human memory alone, but collective memory. The recipes written in worn notebooks, the apprentice watching a master's hands, the engineer correcting a young builder before the concrete hardens, the navigator teaching the stars to the next generation, the astronomer explaining why the gears must align in exactly the right order. These moments rarely appear in history books, yet they are the invisible foundation of civilization. When war destroys a city, buildings can be rebuilt. When trade routes collapse, markets can reopen. But when an entire generation of skilled people disappears without passing on what they know, recovery can take centuries. Sometimes it never happens at all. Modern archaeology has transformed the way we understand the ancient world. Every year, researchers uncover forgotten settlements beneath forests, deserts, and oceans. Ground-penetrating radar reveals buried structures without disturbing the soil. Satellite imagery identifies ancient roads invisible from the ground. DNA preserved in tiny fragments of bone rewrites the story of human migration. Advanced imaging peers inside fragile artifacts that once seemed impossible to study. Ironically, some of our greatest discoveries about the past have become possible only because of the technologies of the present. Yet this raises another question. What will future civilizations know about us? Our ancestors carved laws into stone. They etched inscriptions into metal. They built monuments designed to outlast generations. We store much of our knowledge in digital files, on servers, in cloud storage, on devices that depend on electricity, software, and constantly changing formats. Knowledge has never been more abundant, but has it ever been more fragile? A single damaged hard drive can erase thousands of photographs. An obsolete file format can make decades of work inaccessible. Entire websites vanish without leaving a trace. The ancient world reminds us that preserving information isn't the same as preserving understanding. A library filled with books means little if no one can read the language. A machine means little if no one understands how it works. A formula means little if no one knows why it matters. Civilization survives not because information exists, but because people continue teaching one another. Perhaps that's a lesson hidden inside every mystery we've explored. The true invention wasn't Roman concrete, or Damascus steel, or Greek fire, or the Antikythera Mechanism. The greatest invention humanity ever created was the ability to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. Everything else was built upon that foundation. For thousands of years, countless teachers, craftsmen, engineers, explorers, and dreamers carried that invisible torch. Most of their names have been forgotten, yet their ideas still shape the world around us. Every bridge, every building, every scientific discovery, every innovation, each one rests upon knowledge someone chose not to keep for themselves. History isn't only a record of what humanity achieved. It is also a record of what humanity nearly lost. And perhaps that's why these ancient technologies continue to fascinate us. Not because they prove the past was more advanced than the present, but because they remind us of something deeply human. progress is never guaranteed. It must be protected, shared, questioned, and passed forward. Otherwise, even the greatest achievements can become mysteries buried beneath the sea, hidden beneath the soil, or forgotten in the silence between generations. So the next time you stand before an ancient monument, or walk across a bridge, or hold a piece of technology in your hand, remember this. The greatest distance in history is not measured in miles or centuries. It is measured in the fragile journey from one human mind to another, because civilizations are not built from stone. They are built from knowledge, and knowledge survives only when someone chooses to remember. 2,000 years from now, people may study our world the way we study Rome, Byzantium, and ancient Greece. They may marvel at what we built and wonder why some of it could no longer be recreated. History has never simply been a story of progress. It is a story of remembering and forgetting. The question is no longer what the ancients knew. The question is what we will leave behind, and whether anyone will remember how to use it.